You tell us that it's too distracting.
And now, Pujya Atman Sri Swami Jyotirmayananda ji commences tonight's satsang with a Sanskrit peace chant.
Om Purnamadaha Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. We begin with mystic song by Sri Swami Lalitananda, played and sung by Sri Swami Umananda and Rajneesh.
Our song tonight is based on a poem by Swamiji. It's called O Krishna. O Krishna, may I dream of you, dancing with me on the sea banks of the Yamuna river. O Krishna, abide in my deepest thoughts and unspoken feelings, singing the melody of eternity. May my soul merge with you. May my waking hours be filled with the sweetness of your leaves. May my life flow like the Yamuna river, sparkling with your smile, merging with your divine love. In the depths of my heart, O Krishna, may I ever abide with you. We are recording from the ashram of our revered Guru, Pujya Atman Sri Swami Jyotirmayananda ji in Miami, Florida. Today is August the 19th, 2020, Wednesday evening, and tonight Swamiji will be lecturing on the Yoga Vasistha. This is series 2018, class number 266. And now, Pujya Atman Sri Swami Jyotirmayananda ji.
Om Brahmanandam Param Sukhadam Kevalam Jnana Murtim Dvandvatitam Gagana Sadrisham Tattvamasya Lakshyam Ekam Nityam Vimalamachalam Sarvadhi Sakshi Bhutam Bhavatitam Trigunarahitam Sadgurum Tam Namami. Om. Adorations to Sadguru, who is Brahman, the giver of supreme bliss, embodiment of pure consciousness, one without a second, vast as the ether, infinite, eternal, beyond the three gunas and their modifications, the supreme preceptor. Yoga Vasistha, Nirvana Prakarana Purvardha, section 7, and the theme is extension of ignorance. The message is don't be ignorant. And try to understand what we mean by ignorance. All your experiences that go on from life to life, they will continue endlessly. It's just a repeat. And if you want to stay with that, then that's perfectly okay, you are ignorant. But to understand ignorance is important. What is within the domain of ignorance and how to get out of the domain of ignorance? It's an important point. Unless you are guided by sages and saints, by scriptures like Yoga Vasistha, Gita and others, this ignorance cannot be understood easily. So without going to further details, we go along with what Vasistha is explaining to Rama. The notion of seeking happiness in wealth is an extension of ignorance. First point to understand, seeking happiness is instinctive. To be happy. And that aspect is not ignorant. But seeking happiness in a way that you are really happy, not just a hopping. You can seek mirage of happiness and get into barrage of problems. But understanding happiness and how to seek it, that becomes now your project. But you have to understand ignorance in all its minute detail. While I'm explaining all this and describing everything in life dominated by ignorance, just let me also inject one point. The message that is being given to you is not to just get out of all that by one little spring. You cannot do that. And if you try to do that, it will break your legs. The message is develop Jnana Chakshu. Deal with ignorance in three ways. Charma Chakshu, what you see. Do not take it for real. It's like you have put on blue glass, everything looks blue, wonderful. Dance about it. but don't take it real. You know it very well. You have changed. You have put a glass on you. Similarly, your charma chakshu means the practical eyes, your vision. All that comes within the range of your vision, don't take it for absolute reality. And this is not something coming from a scriptural teaching, it is science. Though science goes on telling, but very few actually go deeper into it. In other words, all your truth is defined on the basis of how things are to your senses. You see, you touch, you talk, you commune with people, hear the news, wait to hear better ones or bitter ones, whichever way. All this is and everything you want to do is to make the world look better. But you look better, think about it, through your eyes. And your eyes cannot give you reality. I will not go into details about it because there are many things to go through. So, to be happy in the most profound way, first to understand happiness is not something you are going to acquire. Happiness is your intrinsic nature. In other words, you have to attain self-realization. Who am I? If you can't attain the perfect knowledge, not shaky knowledge, intuitional knowledge, you are nothing but Satchidananda, existence, knowledge, bliss, absolute. But as long as you are trapped by a world who are looking for happiness in three ways, this intense longing for happiness is called eshana. Putreshana, first type of happiness everyone wants is in the form of children, grandchildren, and with a dream that when you pass away, we will be supporting them. And how wonderful your life has been. You are very fortunate, successful, not like people who are failures. So if you see the pictures of all your sons and daughters growing in the nice way, settled in all good business, grandsons are coming, granddaughters, always waiting for looking at those cozy and cute films. That's called putreshana, that type of. But what you don't realize, that as you age, you are subject to many tragic conditions. You may develop dementia. You may come to a state where cutest of people that you used to enjoy to see them, they salute you. I will ask, who are you? Are you the robber? I'm joking. in a very gross way of explaining that you cannot secure your happiness just by seeing that all your money is safe, it is going to your own sons and daughters and their sons, and everything is you have settled. If that type of idea you have in your mind, and you are working for it, that's called putreshana. Next, the vitteshana. In order to have your desires fulfilled, you want to have security of wealth. But then your mind gets so obsessed by wealth that even you begin to insult people for whom you wanted the wealth. Wealth will becomes more interesting than your relationships and your daily lifestyle. All changes. Wealth. You want to be wealthy. And then still you are not satisfied. You want to be very famous. Location. Well recognized in the world. Recognized for virtues that you never possessed. So, all this is ignorance. Happiness that is sought in children, grandchildren, and other near and dear relatives is also an effect of ignorance. Now the message is, you may say, well, then what should we do? Develop a different way of looking at your children. Any happiness coming through any relation, deep understanding, all those relations are channels. And you are receiving happiness from divine source. So, any relative that makes you happy, thank God, see God in that person, your brother, sister, husband, wife, whomsoever, your child. But when we say see God, it simply implies that your mind should develop that type of project, handling the child, handling a relation in all practical details. At the same time, not getting attached, not trying to limit any dear relative to be always close to you and be growing in the image of your expectations instead of in the image of the essential nature. And also understand that it has double benefit if you have proper relation. If you inspire relatives, near and dear ones, in a way that they become more and more integrated, really happy in their heart, you will become also increasingly spiritually healthy. But if you want to secure happiness on the basis of people around you, through moha, deluded attachment, that will lead you to great despair. We have already the illustration of that. Sulabha, or rather Madalasa, who sang the cradle song, same child, same way of handling children. But the songs with which you are handling the children and cradling them, they are bhajans. They can be also melodious bhajans. I'm joking. And even while handling the child and playing with the child and nursing the child, you are enjoying God's touch. That's the subtle formula. You have to bring it out in all relations. But then your mind will ask, but what about the relation that brings anger and hate, devilish relation? Even in that relation, understand you have the magnet in you. You drew them. And there is a divine purpose behind it. That relation gives you a challenge. Can you be good with good and cute people? But is your goodness limited only to that? Can't your goodness be even in the midst of thorny people? If that goodness proves to be good in all conditions, that's real definition of goodness. So that's the subtle point. Having told this, we go on with the description of ignorance. Driven by ignorance, the spirit falls into the realm of time and space. The very time spirit itself, which continues to devour world systems as if possessed with unceasing hunger, is sustained by ignorance alone. Practical world, look at how all things happen. They are so wonderful, the world may be dancing with joy, but then wait. 10 years later, 100 years later, 1,000 years later, where are those people who enjoyed all that? Is there any trace left? In other words, anything that happens in the realm of time, space, or just think of just time, anything happens at a certain time, it is transient. So for the Sanskrit word, for the world process, is called Ashwatha. Shwa term in Sanskrit relates to yesterday as well as tomorrow. In folk language, in Hindi also, Shwa is called Kal. Kal kya hua? Yesterday what happened? Kal kya hone wala hai? What will happen tomorrow? Same word can be past, yesterday, and can be tomorrow, depending upon the context. It doesn't bring confusion, just like you use the well term. It can be it can be deep tragedy. You are in well. And you are doing well. So, all things that happen are happenings that simply dissolve in time. Time has a tremendous hunger, devours everything. And that time is extension of ignorance. It doesn't have any reality. All of your yesterday was not real. All of your tomorrow will not be real. Now, in another context, if you are a sadhaka, practicing spirituality and progressing, yesterday, all that happened had a purpose. All that is going to happen will be also a divine purpose. Nevertheless, whatever happened yesterday and whatever may happen tomorrow, past or future, all happenings are Maya, cosmic illusion. And Maya is never real. God alone, Brahman alone is real. So, coming back to the theme of ignorance, the world process backed up by ignorance is described as a tree, Ashwatha tree, that sustains the illusion of yesterday and tomorrow. For an aspirant, the project is to cut down this Ashwatha tree. And in the Gita, Lord Krishna says, Asanga Shastrena Dridena Chittva. This is a description of the world process as a tree. And instruction is Asanga means develop complete detachment. Understanding detachment means you have to develop vairagya, viveka and spiritual aspiration. Individual souls are like serpents feeding on the empty air of vanity. Jivas are now described. If there is no spiritual aspiration and you are just led by your karma from one life to another, then you are a serpent that sheds one layer of skin and moves on, glides on. Scales of the snake, one after another the snake goes on throwing and emerging out of it. Similarly, your soul goes on throwing embodiment after embodiment and glides on. And that type of experience, your individual soul, jiva, becomes subjected to. And why this happens? That's because of ignorance. Invaded by the pishachas of worry and deprived of the moon of discriminative intellect. Another simile is being given. It's a dark night. There is no moon in the sky, pitch darkness. Then if you are a distracted mind or a worried mind, you'll find pishachas are coming after you. But when you have the moon of discriminative intellect, viveka, shining over, now you have the choice, or rather now you have the possibility of knowing what is dark and what is not dark. Move away from darkness to a clear path that will lead you to your progress. But if you don't have that, here is a more emphasis given in describing ignorance. If you are simply being led by ignorance, then one passes the period of his youth in delusion. Like lotus petals withering due to frost, human beings enfolded by numerous objects of attachment and affection wither in time. Their senses growing cold and their bodies hastening to death. All this is due to ignorance. The tree of poverty with its ramifying branches of misery. Here poverty is spoken in the most popular way. Means when you are finding yourself having no resources, no money even to buy what will sustain your body. That type of poverty, a miserable, helpless, wretched state. That can be easy, one can easily understand how miserable and degraded state it is. But if you are under ignorance, you are in that predicament of poverty. Only difficulty is that you are drunk. So you don't know it. In the night of delusion, the owl of greed is seated in the empty hollow of the tree of the world process, sending out its inauspicious hoots, foreboding misery and sorrow. The role of greed, led by ignorance. Everyone is greedy. Greed is used in a broad sense. Holding on to your body is also a greed. You know, your childhood days, if you were greedy, keeping the body as it is, you couldn't grow up. Holding on to the worldly support, that's greed. Continuing to go after more and more, never satisfied with any quantity. And that's greed. Simple way of saying, your desire for happiness. The happiness now I'm speaking is your sense pleasure. That desire is never fulfilled. Rather, the desire, if it is fulfilled, makes you greedy for more. And that greed has no end. That's called in another context called Gridhra Drishti. And from Gridhra term comes greed. The age of youth is like a rat being stalked by the cat of old age. In youthful state, you are dancing and bouncing and handling so many things and looking down on people who can't be energetic like you. But while you are doing it, your old age is sitting within your own box. Waiting. Like a cat. And youth state is a rat. So the rat will not survive. This old age is endowed with a steady will and determination. This cat has 9 lives. And is perfectly steady, even though the cat is frustrated. You begin to age and you take some Chyawanprash and think, revive yourself. Cat is not frustrated, it's waiting. And it has tremendous will, determination. First, touching the temples of one's head, it slowly devours the entire body. First attacks your brain. You don't have the same power of handling so many things by your brain and remembering everything. So cat has started doing its job. And then attacks the entire, all the pranas in your whole body go into imbalance. And so gradually affects your teeth, your eyes, your ears. Of course, beginning message comes from your hair. This is the magic of ignorance. The very existence of the world, with its towering mountains, surging oceans, murmuring rivers, and profound forests and plains, all this is an extension of ignorance. That's to be understood in a mature way. Again, I have to remind you, yes, if your mind has not developed any insight in the spiritual value of life, then all that you are seeing in the world, majestic things, all that is in the realm of ignorance. Because what do you get out of all this? You are simply roaming around from one body to another. But if you have a spiritual touch, all this provides for you the opportunity to see God's presence, God's glory. From one angle, all this becomes inspiring. That's called Divya Drishti. And highest Drishti is Jnana Drishti. When you realize all this is worked out by your brain and nervous system. The reality is Brahman, the absolute. All your daily chores, etc., give so much to your mind. But what will happen? What happens when you go to deep sleep? All this is dumped. But do you miss it? Not at all. You wake up with pride. Had a wonderful sleep. That gives you a subtle message that that's the ultimate goal of life. To turn the whole world out by experiencing the mystic eternal sleep. And that's moksha, liberation. This sleep you don't wake up, not even dream. I'm using allegorical language, so don't start stretching yourself to sleep. This earth, which is illumined by the lamps of the sun and moon and has the sky for its roof, exists as such because of ignorance alone. All these are very subtle, satirical statements. The earth and the whole setup seems so wonderful. Your roof is so mysterious, the sky is the roof. But to think back, the sky doesn't even exist. And the earth is Vyarth. Earth is not steady at all. It is a spacecraft. You have paid your karmic fee and you are in a spacecraft. And the earth is constantly going on. Not even within an hour the earth has made a big distance in the vastness of the space. All this, and then even the earth, it's even within the earth, there are so much fire, so many things that can create amazing upheaval. And the earth is holding them all. Ocean with all its mysteries, mountains, volcanic eruptions, all this, earth has all these involved. And it is ignorance that makes you feel you are very secure. Not only so secure, you want to come back. No, don't want to come back. You want to stay on in the same body. Or this is spacecraft. You want to be crafty. Fettered by the strings of expectations, the jivas, like helpless caged birds, are confined to the cages of vasanas. This is due to ignorance. Your soul apparently experiences a sense of freedom. Oh, how wonderful things are. But while you are experiencing a sense of freedom, you don't realize you are in a cage. And you are from the cage just like a parrot or a bird. looks through the cage and giggles and smiles and sings or whatever this bird can do. He enjoys it. So much, all the happiness and thrill that the parrot is having is a miserable setup. The soul acts like that type of a caged bird. What has caged the soul? Vasanas, subtle desires. Those desires change and can go into from one cage to another until you become a sage. Like leaves that flutter in the wind, this world system flutters in the wind of the pranas. Prana has two aspects. One is universal prana, and the whole world is constantly fluttering in that. Everything is moving, everything has its own predicament. Even many of those stars, countless stars in the sky, and all have their stories and mysteries. All this is fluttering in the wind of cosmic prana. And every individual is sustained by the individual aspect of the cosmic prana. Cosmic prana is macrocosm. Individual is microcosm. In other words, again come back to a very simple way to understand. All that you experience in your life, if pranas are not there allowing you to experience, even all that you feel, if you're really joyous, prana has put so many things together to make you joyous. Just to smile, the prana asks your lips, thousands of cells are commanded in a twinkling of an eye. And prana moves towards your cheek, your whole face begins to receive some special inner energy. And all that happens so quickly. So everything about you and your experiences are supported by pranas. And when something happens, a disease that disturbs the pranic setup, now within moments, suddenly all that disappears. Human body becomes lifeless. So that's the predicament one is in. Like forests being consumed by massive fire, the worlds are continuously consumed by the fire of time. And also we have always talked about the three fires: Adhyatmic, Adhibhautik, Adhidaivik. Subjective, miseries from the external world, an act of God. All this is described like fire. And this predicament of staying in a world that is providing threefold fire, that's ignorance. Trying to build up your house in a forest that has fire all around it. What will you call it? Ignorance. like alternating day and night. Creation and dissolution continue ceaselessly. This is due to ignorance. Though inflicted with frustration, whipped by disillusionment. Now, all this applies to everyone. Everyone has experienced everything. So no one should think, oh, it doesn't apply to me. But all this is due to ignorance. The real me, real you, is totally different. Though inflicted with frustration, whipped by disillusionment, struck with calamity, buffeted with age and death, human beings are unable to develop this passion towards the objects of the world, in spite of their being hit constantly, slapped, banged on the teeth, brick on the head, crush on the feet. And in spite of all this, give me again. You are the same thing to go on happening from life to life. When we say life to life, it also implies same thing will happen day after day. That's life. How wonderfully yesterday passed, I want the same way to happen today. And same thing like tomorrow. But being a little greedy, not same, a little better. Souls rise and fall like dust particles in a dust cloud, driven by the storm of time. It is ignorance that dances through the whirlwind of time. See, all this is very high poetry. This universe blooms like a lotus in the lake of pure consciousness. And the numerous souls are the bees tasting its nectar. This is due to ignorance. Here you are simply, all that ignorance does is sustained by consciousness. Just like you see a miserable cinema that makes your mind in a state of terror and torture. But all that is happening is based on the screen. The screen remains untouched. But it is the screen that played all those roles. Pure consciousness is the screen. But due to ignorance, that screen is forgotten. It is as if Kali, the goddess of destruction, as if Kali has the world system for her begging bowl. The entire world is to be eaten up, that's what it implies. Time, spirit has a bowl and world process gives new pakoras. And time goes on eating it. like goddess Kali. This world process is an enchantress with darkness for her locks, sun and moon for her eyes, the stars for her shining teeth, the morning and evening for her red lips, the oceans for her jeweled ornaments, the blue sky for her raiment, the forests for her hair, the mountains for her bones. She continues to deprive the souls of the knowledge of their essential nature. It's a devilish enchanter, enchantment, enchantress. That's the world process. And every soul gets enchanted by all that. Darkness and locks and sun and moon eyes, stars up there twinkling, and morning and evening, and blue sky, forests, and all those that you see in the universe. And thus, enchanted by her, they continue to wander through the cycles of birth and death. This is due to ignorance. World systems rise and fall like bubbles in the vast ocean. Waves of illusion continue to surge. Cravings continue to rise and fall like tidal waves. And the cosmic mind itself comes and goes like waterfowl. This is all due to ignorance. O Rama, all prosperity as well as adversity of the world, all the changes and modifications in the form of childhood, youth, old age, death, and birth, and all the expectations, all the experiences of pleasure and pain are nothing but the magic show of ignorance. Continuing this description in section 8, ignorance is being compared to a creeper. Sage Vasistha continued, O Rama, I shall now describe to you the creeper of ignorance, which holds the three worlds as its limbs and grows in the field of pure consciousness. Pure consciousness is always the basis. The great mountains are the joints in this creeper. They are the joint bones, you see, the great mountains. While its skin is the cosmos. Its leaves and shoots are the numerous living beings, and the worlds are located in its various limbs. This creeper constantly brings forth its fruits and flowers in the form of pain, birth, death, intellectual knowledge, and dull with ignorance. It is ignorance which continues to intensify one's attachment to the objects of pleasure. And again, it is ignorance which continues to intensify one's hatred towards the objects of pain. Like and dislike, all both develop on the basis of ignorance. Through the performance of sacrifices and other rituals, it is ignorance that becomes the giver of pleasure. We are talking about Rajasic, Tamasic sacrifices, and where people succeed to gain their power, to see their enemy crushed as a result of their sacrifice. Sacrifice is illusory, it's not benefiting them. The fruit of sacrifice is another stupid development. But all that becomes wonderful because of ignorance. Ignorance is the giver of birth, and in turn, once born, a person continues to intensify ignorance. Ignorance sustains one's individuality and perpetuates it through repeated births and deaths. And we will continue. Om Ram 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 Om Namah Shivaya Om Namah Shivaya Om Namah Shivaya Om. Prayer for shower of Karunamaya Ras grace of God over all, and may Sanmati blossom in every heart. Aspiration for attaining enlightenment, to understand you are. This is a world of death virus, mortality virus. And that understanding is the purpose behind living in the world with all your project and success and heroism. That insight must develop. You are essentially immortal, not just one of many immortals, but you are the absolute self, Brahman the absolute. All reflected suns. Every reflected sun is the sun, and that must enter into your heart. And imagine how wonderful you will feel. And wonder waits for you. Om Trayambakam Yajamahe Sugandhim Pushti Vardhanam Urvarukmuva Bandhanan Mrityor Mukshiyama Mritat Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukhina Sarve Santu Niramaya Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu Ma Kashchid Dukh Bhag Bhavet Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Tatsat.
No question?
It's okay. Yeah? Okay.
I want a question,
Okay.
if you don't mind. Thank you, Swamiji. I'm going to try to put the question clear. The mind is the feeder of the ignorance, kind of.
E- ignorance is not a substance or a practical reality.
Right.
Like darkness cannot be described what it is. So is ignorance. But all that you are working out about ignorance is in and through your mind. So mind must understand absence of knowledge, absence of enlightenment is ignorance. Absence of but absence doesn't mean that ignorance is a reality and it is absent. Absence here means it never existed.
Mm-hmm.
Ignorance never existed. But your mind being conditioned continues to view a predicament of being in dark and coming out of darkness to light. The whole drama of bondage and release, the drama is played through your mind. And once your mind has been enlightened, the drama goes away. Anything that you want to ask, you have to understand, it will be just a distraction. Mm-hmm. Just like one of the stories of Buddha where someone gives an illustration. A person has been injured by an arrow. He is dying. And someone comes to take the arrow out. But he goes on asking, don't do that first. First tell me, who discharged that arrow? And the person says, by the time I tell you, you will die. So by the time you figure out where is the ignorance that you have to fight with. Instead, work against it. How to be enlightened. And it depends upon the mind. If mind becomes corrected, the ignorance doesn't exist.
It's Maya.
Huh?
It's Maya.
Yes, bias. But same thing is you are experiencing. Even our talk is Maya. Mm-hmm. But only difference is this talk is Vidya Maya. Yes. And Avidya. Avidya is giving you more delusion. Vidya is getting you out of delusion. But not completely, just like you are lost in a forest and suddenly you come to realize that you have to get out of the forest. You can go two ways. You can go deeper and deeper into the forest, or you can get from forest to gradually out of the forest. But until you are completely out, you are in the forest. And if you are moving towards light, until you are completely out, you are still in the forest. But being in the forest doesn't mean it's a complete frustration. You have both possibilities. You can go deeper into the forest or you can get out of the forest. Deeper into the forest called bondage. Coming out of the forest is a path of release. And both are worked out through your mind. That's all to it.
Thank you so much.